Hello, and welcome back to the My First Marathon podcast, where we interview runners in all stages of their running careers about their first marathon experiences to prove to you that anyone can run a marathon. My name is Taylor, and today's episode is a really special one because my guest today is my mom. You might remember her from a mini episode earlier in the year when she was just starting to train again, but this time she's back as a marathoner. After growing up the youngest of 11 in a super competitive family, she's always been an athlete, but running didn't really stick until later in life. A bout of pneumonia years ago nearly took her out of the sport entirely, but fast forward to 2024, where she ran a half marathon with me, got hooked again, and somehow found herself clicking enter on the Chicago Marathon Lottery. What followed was months of early mornings, figuring out fueling, and a last minute hip injury that tested her patience right before race day. Through all of it, she showed up, did the work, and crossed the finish line in Chicago as a first time marathoner. It's one of my favorite conversations we've had, not just because she's my mom, but because her story captures what this show is all about, proving to yourself that it's never too late and you're capable of so much more than you think. Without further ado, let's jump right in. Please welcome my mom, Monique. All right. Mom, welcome to the show for the second time. This is our first time filming a full episode, and you are now a marathoner. So, congratulations on running the Chicago Marathon, and super happy to have you on.
Thanks. Yeah, no, happy to be here. That was a very fun experience, and I'm sure we'll get into the details soon.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, we had you on for a mini episode, so we'll kind of pick up where we left off partway through your story. But what we didn't really get to last time we talked was where this journey started for you, like where athletics started for you, where movement started for you, how you got into running. So let's start from the beginning. Where did movement start for you, and then how did that transition into running eventually?
Long time ago. So growing up, um, grew up in a pretty large family, pretty competitive family. I'm the youngest of 11, and majority of my brothers and sisters played sports, and so of course, being the youngest, I was always trying to keep up with everybody, and so I gravitated to sports as well. So I played volleyball, basketball, softball all through high school, or basically before high school, all the way up until high school. Pretty competitive. When it was time to graduate and go off to college, I could have gone to our community college, but I was ready to spread my wings and wanted to go away to school. And fortunate that, for you, Nani and Papa Ellie, and for me, Mom and Dad were able to send me off to school. So I went to Fresno State, and I was very happy they were paying for it. So I was being very thoughtful about how long it was going to take me to go in through school. So I could have attempted to walk on, but I decided to not do that and just focus on school. And then I missed competitive sports and I missed movement. And so I took a job as the intramural director at Fresno State, and I basically ran sports for the 4 years I went to school and participated and did a little running, rollerbladed a lot, started lifting weights and doing all that, but I didn't really get much into running. And then when I graduated and I moved to Oregon, I found a group of people that were into running. And so I dabbled into it a little bit here and there, did a little 5Ks and everything, but didn't really get back into it until probably 2015. Probably what took me back to running was the fact that you graduated high
I was
school
gonna
and moved
say
off to
2015
college.
was the year I graduated, so
Yep.
that makes sense.
Yep. You graduated, moved off to college. Wyatt was busy in school and playing sports. And
Why, it's my
yeah,
brother.
yes, Wyatt's your. So then I'm like, okay, so what's next? And so I, again, ran a few 5Ks, 10Ks, a little bit here and there around town, kind of got more into lifting and I've just been active my whole life. And so it just was a part of it. But I think it was August 2017, the family decided we wanted to run in San Francisco. And I talked you into running a 10K with me. And at
Mm-hmm.
that point, you're like, this is going to take forever. And I remember
Yeah.
you and I running a few miles at home together. I remember going down to Ashland and running the streets of Ashland while you were in school and just trying to get ready. And then we went and did that race, and it was a lot of fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was fun. I didn't like
And so
running
I
back then
think
though. So
no, you.
it was
So
fun for the day, but yeah, I was not itching to do anything with it after that at all.
Yeah, so then after that race, because it was so fun, and so we had two people of the family ran a half marathon. That was your cousin Sarah and Cole, and then you and I and Tim did the 10K, and the rest of the family did the 5K walk, and it was super fun. And then I think I caught that little bug after that of what could I do, and then I decided. I think it was right after that I decided I think I wanted to try to train for a half marathon, and so I talked to your cousin Sarah, and she set up. I didn't want to go do an actual race. I just wanted to see if I can race the distance or run the distance. And so she set up a virtual race for me, and we did it on December 23rd, 2017, and that was when I ran my first half marathon, and I finished it in 2 hours and 7 minutes, and I was so happy with myself that I'm like, okay, I think this is going to become something that I do. And then I got sick. And
Hmm.
then I got pneumonia. I got what they call a really rare case of pneumonia that put me into the hospital. And I don't need to go into all those details because it's a whole nother story. But basically, I didn't listen to my body. I thought I had what they call runner's asthma. I was trying to as you know, I try to self
Yeah.
diagnose myself all the time and try to help myself. So I was trying to figure out what it was. And nope, it turned out I had some sort of rare case of pneumonia, put me in the hospital. After that, I had some really bad lung issues. And so since then, I've been on like a really low dose of prednisone since that time. And so I was pretty proud of myself to get back into running again and beat the what I was feeling back then. So
When did you return back to running? So you ran your first half marathon in 2017. When did you return back to running? What year was that?
well, from that point all the way up into when I actually returned back to running, I just dabbled in half marathons. It was so that was March when I got put into the hospital. So it was probably a good 8 months later before I actually started thinking I can run again. And none of it ever felt good. Like I always had some sort of issue where it was whether I had breathing issues or I had pain in my hip or pain in my legs or pain in my knees or in my ankles, and it just nothing ever felt good. So I decided, you know what, maybe I'm not going to be a runner. Maybe I'm just going to do strength training. I'm going to do some cross country skiing. I'm going to do hiking and walking, and maybe that's just going to be my level of fitness. So fast forward 2024, when Taylor decided that she was going to get all into marathon training, etc., she talked me into talked me into doing a half marathon in October of 2024. And I think that's kind of when I made a turn.
Yeah. And we've talked about this, just you and I, but I don't think we talked about this last time you came on, but the it feels like a lot of the reason why, like, as you obviously getting sick, that is a whole other layer on top of it, but we talked a lot about how back then you had no concept of how to pace yourself, right? Like, you want to talk about that a little bit, about how you were approaching running at the first time around when you were in it?
Yeah, you put on a pair of shoes and some clothes and you go out the door and you go run. And I
As
didn't
fast as you
take
can.
what Yeah, as fast as you can. As fast as you can and as long as you can. And I didn't have any sense of pace or fuel or water or hydration or eating right or anything. And, I just went out and did it. And unfortunately, my mindset back then was not what it is today, but it was more of if you weren't running fast, you weren't a runner. And I think, that's a huge misconception to how I feel today.
Yeah.
But back then, yeah, little uneducated back then, and it just kind of comes with the competitive nature of growing up, and you always try to be first, and so I was trying to be first
Yeah.
and got myself sick. Probably had to do with it. I think I will say during that training block, Oregon had some really significant fires in the area, and again, being dumb, I ran outside while it's smoky, inhaling all of that air, and I'm sure that didn't do anything. But I also wasn't eating right and fueling correctly and doing all the things wrong.
Yeah. And we'll talk about this more once we get to the marathon, but I think that that's something that you've even told me training for your first marathon, that you kind of get forced to change your habits and your mindset around a lot of these things, because you can't hide behind anything once you start training for a marathon. Like the marathon, all of your weaknesses in running and all of the lifestyle choices that you make that aren't conducive to running a marathon come to the surface when you have to train. So we'll talk a little bit more about how like marathon training forced you to shift some of those habits. But
Sure.
yeah, I think the big lesson there is, yeah, back then I remember you being really competitive with running and being really fast. And I remember, even now that I am more educated on, pacing and things like that, and I'm further in my running career, looking at your paces from back then, I'm like, oh my gosh, you were sprinting. You were running a half marathon at full blast, which is in training runs.
Yes.
So
Great.
okay, cool. So yeah, so in October of 2024, there was a half marathon in Greensboro, North Carolina. If anybody knows it, the Cannonball Marathon. It was a fun one. It was a little greenway
Hmm.
run, but I don't remember why we decided. Do you remember how that conversation went about? Like, did I reach out to you and just say, "Do you want to run this with me?" Or how did that all come about?
I think I'm your biggest fan and I listen to all of your episodes. You and I talked quite a bit. It's always very intriguing to listen to all the different stories and whatnot. And I think the conversation started about whether or not I thought I could get back into running again. And have you ever thought? So you and I started having some conversations, and I think you probably picked up on a lot of my kind of interest in, like, maybe, and so I think you just started to prod a little bit more about maybe
You could say it. I
let's
was probably
think
being,
about it.
was probably being pushy.
And then you sent me a text and said, I could probably go find it. And you said,
Yeah,
how cool would it be? Do you want to run a half marathon with me? Because I think it was part of your training block. I
it
think
was.
at
Yeah,
where you were training, you needed to go do a half marathon. And so you said, why don't you? And I hadn't seen you for a while, and I do enjoy my trips out to North Carolina. So it was a great trip because I flew out there by myself. I got to spend some great time with you and my doggy Tally and Tabor, and it was the kitty cat Tabor, and it was just great. It was a good experience, and um, I tried to follow a plan prior to that, and even that run, the first I think 12 or 10 miles were good, and then it was that 10 through 13 where I didn't feel like I trained well enough.
hmm
And I don't even remember, were we taking fuel? I don't
we were.
remember.
Yeah,
We did.
you think I would have let us not take any fuel for a half marathon? You know me
Okay.
better than
I just
that.
don't remember being so yeah, I think I was taking your fuel saying, what do you want me to
Yeah.
take? What do you want me to take?
Yeah, it was
But
definitely like we had very separate training blocks. Like I just kind of let you do your thing. I think you trained with an app. You trained with like Run with Hal. I think I had gotten you on that one at that point. And but yeah, we trained completely separate for those. And I think I told you when to take fuel if I'm remembering right, but you had your own stuff. Like you had brought your own stuff with you.
okay.
Yeah.
Actually though, for that one, I might have used the Runna app for that one
Mhm.
because I didn't I remember one of the reasons why maybe it wasn't as successful later in the longer miles is because I didn't do any of the speed work correctly or at all. Like I was just running. I wasn't understanding at the time all of the different speed workouts and the Bartlett, or I just didn't
Fartleks, yeah.
understand any of those things that I was supposed to be doing. I just went out and ran the distances and probably cheated because I probably still have this mindset that I can just go do it. I don't need to train for it. And I think that's what I learned different when you and I, well, when we did the second half marathon, which was the Eugene half.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess if you want to talk a little bit more about we when we were running that half marathon, there was definitely you definitely hit a wall. I remember
Mhm.
where we were fine, we were fine, and then yeah, like you said, like around mile 10,
Yeah.
it hit you. So I guess we'll talk about that compared to your marathon experience. But what do you remember about hitting the wall? What was that feeling like? What do you remember about that from your first half?
It's I it's more about what my body felt like, and my mindset. And I think it was I had some pain in my knee. And is what it was doing. And then I never know, is that my shoe? Is it my poor training? Is it all in my head? But it was really have that. So what we did a lot of one or walk run
Run walk,
to
yeah.
get through that. And that worked. And what's interesting is that when you walk, I don't feel it. When I run, I feel it. So is that in my head? Is that what is that? But I think that's just, more time on my feet. But that was my first return back to running again. So I gave myself a little bit of grace there. I remember being very exhausted when we were done.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think just had more to do with maybe poor shoe and just not enough training that caused me to have that type of pain.
Yeah. Yeah. And then from there, right, so we ran the that first half marathon that we ran together on October 12th, 2024. And I think
Yep.
that same weekend or maybe the weekend after was when the Chicago Marathon was taking place. So we had a little bit of I know you had the bug a little bit. We had at least talked about maybe you training for another half or something, but I was in the mindset last year that I was going to apply for every lottery and just if I get one cool, like I'll figure out
Mhm.
how to do it. But I remember I know Chicago is one of the more accessible marathons out of all of the world majors and thought, well, if she's gonna run a marathon, I didn't honestly, I'll be completely honest with you, I didn't think that you would actually do it. But I was like, if it's gonna be one, it's gonna be Chicago because it's a big enough race that it's like it'll build some excitement for both of us. It'll be something new for me too. Like it won't just be another race that
Mhm.
I've already ran, and it's one of the easier ones to get into. So I was like, okay, I'm going to put in for lottery. And I remember texting you the link or emailing you the link and saying, if you want to, you don't have to put any money down. You just put your credit card in. If you get in, you get it. But I was like, nobody ever gets in. So talk about your side of that whole experience and me sending you that email, that
Uh,
text.
so you were sending me that text. I remember sitting. Um, so it was October, right? December
Yeah,
or
it would have been
October?
right after the Chicago Marathons,
Yeah.
usually when the lottery opens back up. So it had to be within a couple weeks of us running that half.
Right. So I'm sitting there on the couch, had my laptop on my lap because typically when I'm sitting in front of the TV, I usually have my laptop open and either working on work or doing some different things. And I get that text from you. And so, of course, I start Googling and I'm like looking at it and stuff. And I start seeing the process. And, I'm like, oh, it's a lottery. I don't ever win anything. And I think after doing the half and spending that time with you and knowing that Eugene was on the calendar because I know you were coming out to run Eugene
Oh,
and
that's right. We were already signed up for that. Yeah, yeah.
right.
So
So
you were signed up for the half already, and I was signed up for the full.
right, signed up for the
Yeah.
half and then you were coming home in December and you also sent the family a text and says, "Hey, how about who wants to do a jingle bell run?" And
It sounds like I'm an instigator.
so, and then you're like, if there's a 5K and a 15K, and you're like, but I'll do whatever. And then you're like, but I kind of am leaning towards the 15K. And I'm like, well, you're not running it by yourself. You're coming home all the way home for Christmas. And then your brother Wyatt decides he's going to do it. And so it was going to be a little family affair. So then I started getting more excited about maybe this could be something that we do together that's pretty fun. I know I just kept getting more intrigued on what can I do it? A lot of your people on a lot of your guests on your podcast, talk a lot about anyone can run a marathon. And that's a lot of what you are focused on preaching, not preaching, but letting everyone know that anyone
Hmm.
can run a marathon. And so I thought, well, maybe I could someday. But I had my sights on something local. So I was like, well, maybe someday I'll do Eugene or someday
Hmm.
I'll do Portland. And a few things that I learned about myself during some of these training blocks is I don't like winter running.
Hmm.
So training in the fall, winter is not my cup of tea. I don't care for rain. I live in a rainy place, but I don't care to run in it. We have a cabin up in the mountains, and it snows a ton, and we go up there quite a bit during the winter time. And I ran a lot on snow in spikes, and that again, I did it because I had to, but it wasn't something exciting. So I'm like, if I'm ever going to do a marathon, it needs to be one in the fall so that I can train during the spring, summer. And I thought that would be so. I was actually looking at the Portland one,
Yeah,
and so I said, you didn't may not have know that then, but I was
I
like in
didn't.
my
Don't
head,
think
I'm
so.
going, okay, I'm going to go ahead and throw my name in this lottery, which I never win. And if I don't get it, then I think I'm going to do the Portland one because that's
Mm.
close by. The family can come with me and I'll have some crowd support. So I think I'm going to do that. But I wasn't going to sign up yet because I don't know. I had it in my head too that I had to run Eugene pain free to think that I even am capable of doing it twice, like
Mhm.
running 13, you know, twice. And so that was another mindset of mine. So yeah, threw my card in there, filled out all the paperwork, and just said, let's go do it. Because again, it's lottery. I'm not going to win.
Yeah, that's what we think. But yeah, so okay, cool. So and this is interesting because I didn't know that you were thinking about the Portland Marathon either. So you Chicago wasn't really an accident. You were gonna run a marathon in the fall no matter what,
Mhm.
which is awesome. And you kept that from me probably because as it sounds like I'm a running instigator in this family. So I probably would have pressured you if you told me that. But that's interesting. Okay, so when you I mean, we found out about Chicago after Eugene, right? So I guess let's talk about
Yes.
the Eugene half marathon first, and then we'll talk about you getting the email saying that you, spoiler alert, got in through lottery. But for
Uh,
Eugene, so yeah, talk a little bit about that. How did you train differently? What adjustments did you make? And then you can talk about the race a little bit too.
yeah, I trained differently with that time I did use the Run with Hal app and was a little bit more probably determined to follow the plan a little bit more carefully.
Hmm.
That's when I started fueling or learning a little bit more about different types of fuel and working on what works for me and what doesn't work. And um, it was an exciting race because you were coming home to run the full, and Wyatt, our son Wyatt, brother Wyatt, and nephew and cousin Tim decided to run it with us. So we had a little bit more people to do it together. So that was a lot of fun. Um, and the first 10 miles I got to run with you and your friend
Hmm.
Colin, which was a lot of fun. So there was a
Yeah.
lot of good distractions. And then you guys left and you guys had to go on and did your way. And then
Well, you left. We had to keep running. You
well, yeah.
left.
So we split at mile 10, the
Yeah.
marathoners split off and keep going, and the half marathons turn. And I think I realized that I like running with somebody because there's distractions, there's company, and there's support. And so
And your
when you
training
left,
runs, sorry, your training runs for training for that half were mostly alone, right? Like mostly solo.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess that's the parallel or the difference is I don't mind training on my own, but I liked during the races, I liked doing it with somebody.
Hmm.
And so after that, from mile 10 to 13, I was all on my own. And I'm like, oh, so I had nobody to talk to or nobody to, chat with or say, keep going or whatnot. And, but I actually did really well for 2 more miles. My paces were good. I felt good. I wasn't slowing down based on what you and Colin and I were running. And it was mile 12 that I got that dang twinge
It's
in my
okay.
knee and that in my knee again. And I'm going, what the heck? Maybe I'm just not built for this distance. And so I pulled off to the side, did a little stretching. Felt like maybe I just needed to crack my knee, do something. And so I did that, stretched it out. And then I'm like, I am so close to the finish line. I am not going to do this. And so I started running again. And then it was the going through that very last bit before you get into the stadium
Hmm.
was probably what did it because there was all the runners coming this way still that still had to go do that loop. And then all the runners that were finishing the race. And I was like, oh, well, I'm this close. I can't stop. And then as soon as I entered the stadium, it was the strangest thing. I had no pain in the world. So I think it was just the adrenaline. And again, it's like, is it in my head or like, what is that twinge? And so I got through the stadium and yeah, it was great. And knowing that you were out there still and Wyatt and Tim were out there, yeah, it was a really fun experience.
And then I guess from that experience, you were thinking about running a marathon before that, but you wanted to run this race to like decide if you were going to do it or not. So did that race give you enough confidence to feel like you were ready to sign up for a marathon, or how did you leave the race feeling, I guess?
Yeah, I I think I knew that there was some things that needed to change about my training and also for my body. And I think a lot of it had to do with what I'm eating and how I'm hydrating and then also the strength training that needed to come to strengthen the muscles that are needed to run. And I think that was the mind shift going in to, because at that point we did not know we were running Chicago yet. And
No.
so I'm just still thinking, I liked what I felt. I liked how I had progressed. And I just felt like I needed to do some more research with your help on how I needed to go about it next time.
Yeah. Cool. How did so that run, I don't want to talk about like my own running too much, but that race out of my 4 marathons was the first one that I ran injured and finished injured. Did that rock your confidence at all for the marathon that I finished
Oh,
in a
yeah.
wheelchair?
Yes, absolutely. You know, when you hit the so-called wall or things get hard, um, I will say the 26.2 distance is very humbling because in your mind you think, oh, look how many people are doing it. It's very simple, it's easy. Just go do it. But when you're in the moment and you realize how hard it is a very humbling experience for sure. And knowing what you went through and pushed with the grit that it took to finish that, I'm like, oh, well, if she can do it, I can do it. And then also thinking of all the people out there that, and just in life in general, in that have a lot of obstacles and a lot of things, and they can't run. You know, maybe there's people that can't run, and what am I doing out here? Going to give up just because I have a little twinge or this and that, and that's not what has made us. So yeah, there was a lot of discipline and a lot of grit, and yeah, and a lot of respect to you and those out there that do this distance.
Yeah, they say if you want to restore your faith in humanity, go watch a marathon, and that's 100. Whether
Yeah.
you watch people finish feeling awesome, or you watch people who like are stumbling across the finish line, like that. Yeah, it really puts into perspective what hard actually is in life, and
Yep.
yeah, it can carry you through a lot. But all right, let's talk about how we found out about Chicago. So I think we found out in May, if I'm remembering right. Like we started to get the emails in May. The Eugene Marathon was end of April, so
hmm
talk about your side, because I know my side of when you got the email, but talk about when you got the email saying you're running Chicago.
Well, actually, I forgot I did it.
Yeah.
I forgot that I put my name in the hat, and you sent me a text in the morning before I left the house for work and said, "Aren't you excited? We're finding out today." And I'm like, "Finding out what?" You're like, "If we get into the Chicago Marathon." And I'm like, "Oh, I totally forgot that I did that."
Yeah, you
And
remember that fake
so,
lottery you signed up for? It's
yeah,
very real. Yeah.
yeah, I totally forgot that I did that. So it was not even on my mind. And so I get to work. It was 8:30 in the morning Pacific Coast time. And I'm, getting into the groove at work and I'm going through all my emails. And when I signed up through my work email, not my personal email. So I'm at my work computer and it was 8:30 in the morning and I'm looking and I get this email that says, "Congratulations, you've been selected for the Chicago Marathon." And I'm like, "Oh crap." And so I kind of sat there for a second and was like not thinking it's real, and then I'm going, "Oh shoot, I guess I'm doing this." And then I text you and I said, "Holy crap, I just got into the marathon and you were so excited for me and I think surprised."
Yeah. Because I put in the lottery 3 times before that and I never got it. So it
And
always
then
seems like it's the people who don't expect it that get in.
I think it's a sign because I never win anything. So I won that. And then the other sign was October 12th, 2024 is when you and I ran that half marathon. And so it was only, it's a sign for you and I to run the Chicago Marathon together October 12th, 2025. So who
Yeah.
knows where we're going to be October 12th of 2026? Who
2026.
knows?
Yeah, that was pretty crazy when we realized that it was the exact same day. It was like, yeah, it felt like fate. But I know from my perspective, you sent me that, and I was like, I didn't get in through lottery, so I was like, I got to figure out how to run this race because I knew that you weren't going to want to do it alone. Were you even thinking about doing it alone, or were you like, you need to figure it out?
Well, I told you, I'm like, I'm not doing this alone, so you need to
Yeah,
figure it out. But I was going to do it no matter what.
yeah,
I was like, I got in. How many people try to do this and don't get in? That's not very fair for me to get in and then waste it. And then you had let me know that you can't defer it. Like you're in, either you're in or you waste your $300, and
Yep.
I wasn't going to waste it. So
Yeah, those really long terms and conditions that we didn't read. It was all in there.
yes, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So I got on a charity team. Shout out to American Cancer Society. That's who I ended up charity fundraising with. And then we started putting together a training plan. So we were a full May, June, July, August, September, October. No, so about 7 months out from the race at that point. So start to talk to us about like what were you thinking about? What were your first steps in putting together a training plan?
Now that I'm remembering, you built me my half marathon plan for one we did in North Carolina.
Oh, yeah. You're right. I did.
Yeah. So you built me that plan. So I did that. And then I did the Runna app for Eugene. And then I decided I wanted to try the Run with Hal. You actually suggested that maybe this would work better for me. And it was
Yeah.
great. Yeah, I loved it. The only thing I wish I would have had different is some sort of more strategic strength plan. I
To
kind of
go with
created
it.
my own. Yeah, I kind of created my own based on what I've been doing and some things that you've built, but I wish that I had more structure there. I think that would have contributed to better movement. But no, the Run with Hell app was great. And I decided, boy, I got to respect this distance. So I can't miss any workouts. Like I've got to be very much on time, do the distances, because there's no joke here. Like if you're undertrained, you're going to hurt yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I guess just a little sidebar that the reason why I had her pivot from Runna to Run with Hal, I think that, I don't want to get too like opinionated, but I think that some of those AI based apps, they tend to be a bit more one size fits all. And they tend to, at least in my experience, push you beyond your means. If you put in a time goal that's faster than where you're currently running, they tend to ramp a little bit quicker. And I felt like that's what led to her not feeling so great for like even in Eugene, was just like the app had her ramp a little bit quickly. So in my experience, I trained for my first marathon with a Hal Higdon plan, and I felt like that focused on the fundamentals of running, of this is the science behind how much you should be building distance every single weekend. This is how often you should be incorporating some sort of speed. And I think that the Run with Hal app, better than other apps for a first time marathoner, explains to you what you're doing. I
Hmm.
remember you were sending me screenshots of what it was like, what
Yep.
Hal was telling you in the app. I think that one does a really good job of just like teaching you about marathon training. But the other thing that I will say is I have my coaching certification now, and I was in the process of getting it while she was training. So we were making adjustments as we went based on feedback. So my
Yep.
opinion is I would never 100% rely on an app, but I do find that the Run with Hal app was a little bit more beginner friendly for somebody training for their first marathon, and that it's always good to take your plan and consult with somebody who has learned about this stuff. That's just my little
Yep.
sidebar since we're talking about apps. But okay, cool. So you were progressing through training, and last time, so you had a ton of time to build a base and then start training. So I guess we can skip some of the base building training because I don't remember much happening in there. You did pretty well with base building, right? Nothing
Hmm.
crazy. So
Yep.
talk about the first time that you ran over 13 miles, because that was where we left off from your last mini episode.
Yep.
Was you were about to run your 14-mile run and you were really nervous. So what was that like the first time running over 13 miles?
Yeah, well, first off, it's like the night before you have to get all geared up. And the way I work on my long runs is I have to kind of get myself hyped up and talked into it. So there's a lot of prep beforehand, planning out my run. I did a lot of out and backs. Majority of my training runs over 13 miles were home on the road on pretty flat, but as you know, running around the lake where we live, there are some subtle inclines and declines, but for the most part, it's flat. And so everything was out and back. So I would just, take my app and make sure I know how far I am so I can turn around and come back. But it was pretty exciting. So once I got to that 13 miles, I was like, okay, I've been here before. Now what is it going to be like to get past it? And I remember turning around at the halfway mark and on my way back and feeling very, very proud of myself. And that was probably the first time I thought, okay, I can do this.
Yeah. when as you started to kind of get into those, like I remember you telling me that you were pretty intimidated by some of the like the bigger distances as you started to get to 15, 16,
Hmm.
17. But we talk a lot on the show about how you prove to yourself along the way that you can do these things. So how did your mindset shift or like what sort of confidence were you starting to build as you started to chip away at the 15 miler, 60 miler, 17, 18? Like how was your confidence building?
Well, I didn't have a choice. If I'm going to run 26.2, then I'm going to have to run that distance. And so I I looked at each of these training runs by how long I was going to be out. So I would, base my time on, okay, I need to run for X amount of hours. And when I set myself up for success in the app. So when I first started running, I think you and I ran that half marathon, and I was like averaging, anywhere between 12 to 13-minute miles
Hmm.
based on how slow I was running at that time. And having to throw in some walking, etc. And in Eugene, I think I improved that to we were more closer to the 12s, I think. Um, and a lot of my training runs, so when I put the time, in that app, it says what time do you think what is your average time, basically. And so I
Hmm.
put in 12 minutes because I have this like personal goal that I didn't want to be any longer than that, but I didn't think I can be much faster, but I thought that was doable for this distance. And so every time I'd go out and run, I tried to make sure I maintained that easy pace or beat it. And I think that was part of my mindset as I was beating it quite a bit. So that was making me feel good. But I was also very aware of my body going, I want to run what's comfortable and make sure that I'm able to complete the distance comfortably. I can carry a conversation. I'm not out of breath and my body feels good. And that was
Hmm.
what I was focused on. And so after I did the 14, I think my next one was 16. And I'm like, well, if I could do 14, I could do 16. And
Yeah.
so I was always very aware of how I felt at 14. And then I'm like, okay, I can do 16. And yeah, it's that whole you get a PR every single time because I've never ran that distance before. So my confidence was building. I was feeling stronger and I was getting more excited. I was very intimidated for the weeks to come, for sure.
Yeah, but you do it slowly. So, like you said, if
Yes.
I can run 14, I can run 16. If I can run 16, I can run 18. Like it's a
Yep.
slow, gradual build. And then fueling before we get to the 20 mile run, the big one. How were you adjusting fueling during this time? I know you were working on dialing it in. We talked quite a bit about it, but what did all that look like?
Well, so 14 and 16 felt fine. That 18 miler was the one that after I got to 16, from 16 to 18, I started getting some like cramping. And I remember coming home and talking to you about it and said, okay, I finished it, but I was feeling cramping at, just like muscle cramps, not cramping like side aches or anything like that, or pain. I had no pain. It was just more cramping. And you said that I was, because I was, remember, actually, no, I think I was on my 16 that I did that.
Yeah.
And you said, well, what are you drinking? And I said, well, I have 2 flasks full of just water. And then I have one that had my liquid carbs in it, along with all the other fuel I had. And you were like, well, regular water actually dehydrates runners. So you need
It
some
just doesn't
electrolytes
hydrate
in
you
those.
quick enough, is what it is.
Right.
It's like you need something, yeah, like an electrolyte mix. Hmm.
Yeah, so then on that 18-mile run, I switched it and I did what you said. And so then I filled my flask with the noon endurance.
Hmm.
And then I filled my handheld with my scratch liquid carb and drank everything. And then I had a spare flask in my back and got through all that. And then all that cramping went away. And then that contributed with pre-hydration the day before, the morning of, and just all of the things that lead up to it has really helped make it more successful.
Hmm. And there were gels that you were not a fan of in the beginning. How did you dial in the gels that you were taking?
Luckily, where I live in Cottage Grove, Oregon, and we live by a lake. And around the lake during the time of my training, there's lots of places to stop to go potty. And so I was very aware of what I was taking. And so I tried a lot of different ones that you suggested. I did the feed
Hmm.
kind of variety pack. You got me something for Christmas or my birthday or something,
Feel
or
goods.
Mother's Day. Yeah. So I had all this stuff. And so I would just try them. And if they didn't sit well in my stomach, or a lot of it is texture. I don't really care for some of the texture of them. And so I finally found, by your suggestion, the liquid goo. And that
Hmm.
was just like water. And that goes down super quick. They taste good and it gives me and I alternate between regular and caffeinated. And that was a game changer. And then in addition to, I bought scratch chews and noogs. The sour
We love
apple
Dukes.
are sour. Well, the sour apple is good.
They're good. Yeah. It's
They're
candy.
super good. And so then I alternate between those, and then I like the salt sticks,
Yep.
the
The chews.
tablets
Hmm.
to choose. So all of that rounded out everything. And so the noon endurance going into the majority of my water, the scratch carbs going in help me have, and then you and I have spent a lot of time trying to um, figure out how many carbs that I need based on my weight and everything else. And so just trying to keep that dialed in. I feel like I've got it figured out now.
Yeah. Well, spoiler, we fueled very well. That was one of the things that we
Yes.
knocked out of the park for Chicago. But all right, cool. Well, let's talk about the 20-mile run, the big one. So I know that you were pretty nervous going into it, but you had a pretty good 18-mile run. So you were
Yeah.
coming in with some confidence. But yeah, talk about your 20-mile run.
Well, so my 14, 16, 18 mile runs, I had company. So that was always great. Either it was your dad or your soon to be sister in law, Piper. Were very nice to ride their bike alongside me to keep me company, make sure I'm safe when you're doing those types of runs. But spoiler, on my 20 miler, dad's out because your brother was hunting. And so dad was helping Wyatt. Piper was busy. And so I had to run my 20 miler all by myself. And so that was another mindset, was like, okay, well, now I got to go do this. I was worried about going 10 out and 10 back by myself because it would take me around the other side of the lake. And I didn't want to go over there on my own. So I literally, on our side of the lake, ran the distance 4 times. So I ran it the distance of our side of the lake 4 times to get to my 20 miler. And it may have contributed to why I actually ran it pretty quickly, because I averaged a 10:15. Oh, I think I
Yeah, you
finished
were a
at a
little
10.
quick.
Yeah, I averaged at an average of 10:59. So that made my um, confidence go straight up. And I felt pretty dang good when I was done. And so, but I think it could, I think going back and forth, I just had this mindset, well, let me see if I can go faster, which is not the right thing to do.
But we live and we learn though. But it did give you some confidence, and I think that that's a positive out of that experience. And then yeah, that's what we say with that peak run is like it either teaches you something or it teaches you a lesson or it gives you some confidence. So it gave you some confidence. So we're happy with that. And then we hurt ourselves. So yeah, so we went into taper from there, and out of all of the runs, and I want to make sure that I highlight this before I turn the floor over to you, but out of all of the runs, you had one run that didn't go your way. And I think that that is all we can ask for in marathon training, because you're always going to have one run that knocks your confidence or takes you down a peg. That's just how it goes. Yours, unfortunately, was just a little closer to the race than we would love. So I think that's what contributed to it. But yeah, talk about that run and what happened there.
Oh, again, I'm going to say, I have been completely humbled this entire block. And where I started on this training very much like, oh, I got this, I can do this. Yes, I had my doubts, but every week I felt like I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And so leading up to taper, I had it in my mind that everyone seems to have some sort of run that doesn't go well. I didn't have one yet. And I'm like, knock on wood, I'm good. I'm gonna be able to breeze through this training block and no problem. And then yeah, then humbles you right down to the ground.
Yep.
So um we have a cabin up in the woods, like I've mentioned before. I ran up there. So prior to getting to the 13 miler, I ran my 12 miler at the cabin. I've ran some 8 miles at the cabin. I did a 9 mile at the cabin. I did a lot of my training runs there, and I run in a trail shoe by Hoka. And I've, I've ran there several times, and it's harder because you're in trails and you're on, loose dirt, and you're going over sticks, and what, you have to watch where you're going. But I've done it. But after I got to in this training block, after I got to mile 13, I said, well, all of my long runs I want to do in town, because I want to make sure I do it on pavement and on the road that I'm going to be running the marathon on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I thought, well, the first week of taper was a 12 miler. And I'm like, well, I did 12 miles before, I could do it again. So I laced up, we went to the cabin, laced up my trail shoes. I decided I wanted to run on some flatter. So we had to go downhill for a mile, and then I was going to go out 6 and back. And the first mile going downhill, obviously just going downhill, I think might have tweaked something. But as soon as I got into mile 1.5, 1.5 to 6.7, I just had this side ache and this pain in my hip, and it wasn't getting any better. So I walked a little, I was fueling, I was doing everything, and I finally had to give up after 6.7 miles and walk back to the cabin. And I said, it's not doing it. And I felt horrible. And I said, I screwed up. I've got 2 weeks from the marathon, and I'm like, I think it was 3 weeks to the marathon. And in my head, I'm like, okay, I'll get better. The next morning I woke up and it was worse. And I'm like, I'm in trouble. It was very frustrating, and it was a mistake I wish I wouldn't have done. And I wish I would have, just stayed home and did my run, and, maybe go to the cabin after. But yeah, live and learn, I guess.
Yeah. And I think that you didn't tell me this, but Dad told me that this was the first time that you broke down and cried like the whole training block. So hit to confidence for sure. But how were you approaching the marathon from there? Like, were you like, I'm going to figure it out? Or were you having doubt if you could finish it? Or like right after that run and the weeks following and while you're tapering, what was going through your head? Because we really, you talked to me about it, but we decided that we were going to really pull back on training and just not have you run at all until we were able to run comfortably, because, taper is important and you want to keep your legs fresh. If you're going for a time goal, it gets way more and more important, but we weren't going for a specific time goal. So the advice that I gave you and that I would give anybody is just let's just take it completely down and just do the movement that we can. But how was that affecting your confidence for the race?
Well, right away it was, I was upset. And I was like, I worked so hard for the last, X amount of weeks, and for this to happen was very frustrating. You helped several times, because you're like, hey, you've already put in the hard work. You've already got to your 20 miler. You can do it. We're just going to rest. You talked to your coach. Your coach gave some advice, which I'm very thankful, and shout out to her for helping provide me some sanity, because I think those conversations helped. Dad made me go to a physical therapist, which I'm not, me and going to doctors is not my thing. So he, unbeknownst to me, he made me an appointment, texted me and says, you're going to the doctor. And I'm like, so then I had to call the doctor, and I said, apparently my husband just called and said, I'm coming to come see you. So anyway, so I validated that, went in there, and he did some exercises with me. He did some deep massaging, and he's like, I wish I had you for 6 weeks, but I have you for 2 weeks. So I think you're going to be okay. And he sent me home with a bunch of stretching exercises. He wanted me to ice 6 to 7 times a day. And he said, rest, do biking, walking, anything that doesn't hurt it. If it gets aggravated, stop, but to do these exercises. So I was very diligent. I iced, I did the stretching that he wanted me to do 4 to 6 times a day. I rode the bike. That's when I started getting a little bit more confident as I went into that second week of taper, because it didn't hurt when I was biking, and it didn't hurt when I was just doing some different exercises like some squats and some stretching. It just really hurt when I was trying to run. So, of course, me being me, I, tried to run a few times and early on in that second week. And then finally, I don't know if I told you, but then I'm like, I gotta not do that.
Hmm.
I need to rest and trust what everyone is telling me to do. And you were very supportive in your encouragement. And I think that helped because I was feeling very discouraged for sure.
Yeah. Well, I had just been there with Eugene, and like I knew that I, I'm not saying this in like a diminishing injury kind of way, but I knew that your injury was more normal than mine was, and I was able to rest and still run the marathon. So I was like, gosh, if mine, if I could do it for mine that I probably shouldn't have even ran a marathon on, then your completely normal injury where a lot of people get hurt and tapered, we're gonna be okay. So, yeah, it was just about managing our emotions for a couple of weeks there.
Right.
I think was the key. But yeah, let's talk about Chicago. So I'm gonna talk a lot in my episode, I think, about the build up to Chicago, like the logistics and all of that. So maybe we can skip some of that stuff because I really just want to hear your experience from the actual race. But I do want to talk about the start line because you were very antsy, and I could see I could see for your first marathon why you would be so antsy. But my mom and I definitely have different strategies pre-race with how we get to the start line. I am very much a let's find somewhere to camp and sit for as long as possible so we can be off of our feet until the last possible second, and then we'll kind of squeak our way into the corral and we'll go because I knew that we weren't going to go in with the time goal. But talk about your experience with the start line.
I'm a nervous Purvis on certain things, and I like to be early and on time. And if they say to be in your corral before 8:10, then I want to be in my corral before 8:10. And everyone else was going in the corral, and here Taylor wants to sit outside the corral, and I'm like, let's just go sit in there. And she's like,
Because there was no spots to sit, and I was like, I don't want to go in there and stand, but it was not my experience, not my first marathon, so we went
yeah,
inside and sit. But yeah, that was the start line, was just about 2 hours of us going back and forth about whether or not we should be sitting or not. And it was, I wish I had it on video, but I'd like finally get us to sit for 2 seconds, and then she'd be up and be like, okay, I think we need to get going. Like we just sat down. So we probably
uh,
were on our feet a little bit longer than I would have loved in the start
yes,
corral. But
yes,
I think what we both underestimated was how, once we were in wave 3 in group N, which is the last group, and I think we underestimated how long you were going to be standing in the corral in wave 3, listening to the other waves go. So I mean, you can talk about your side,
yes.
but yeah, I definitely underestimated how long it would take.
Yeah, I think it's a long time that I was not prepared for sure. I got very antsy and I kept looking, trying to see if I could see the start line. And every time we'd move, and then we'd move a little and it'd stop. And I'd be like, my gosh.
Yeah.
So, shout out to Chicago weather though, because I think could have been a lot worse if it was colder. Because, as soon as we started running, we took off our tops and I had some gloves on and we got that. And so we're just in our racing gear, and it could have been a lot worse and colder, and that would have made it a little bit more miserable. But luckily, the weather was great. But yeah, that start line, if I do it over again, I'll be a little bit more mentally prepared and not be so antsy about having to get into that crowd.
See, I don't know if I believe you because this is just how you've been my whole life. You're like a go there and stand kind of person, but it's okay because I
Yes.
don't think it impacted us too much. Um, we started the race. It was very exciting to cross the start line. And
Yep.
then you're in the corral for so long. And oh, I should say this too. I'm going to talk about this a lot more on my episode again, but I was pacing us. So like my coach and I had already worked out a strategy. I had the strategy programmed into my watch. I was the person who was controlling the pace of the marathon because I wanted to make sure we didn't go out too hot. I was just trying to be like the mediator for the whole thing. So I made the decision because we were in the corral for so long to have us stop at the first possible available. I didn't think it was going to come up so quick, but the very first porta potty, because we had gone to the bathroom a couple of times before the race, but I had already had to go again by the time that we started walking. And I know you, and I know that you were going to have to go at like mile 1, even if we went past that first one. But so I made us pull off basically before the race even really started. We had ran like maybe 0.2 of a mile. And then we stopped and got in line at a very short line for the porta potty. But that drove you crazy. So talk about that.
Oh, that's, starting the race and knowing what's ahead and all the runners and all the things that are around you. And I was so amped up and excited and nervous all at the same time. And I'm just getting in my groove, and you're like, oh, we're going to stop over here and go to the bathroom. And I'm like, what? And you're like, well, I know, you went through that whole thing about, we don't want to stop. The porta potties are going to be much busier, blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, I know, but okay. So we stop, we go to the bathroom, and then we come out and everyone's gone. And then my initial like competitiveness is like, we got to catch up.
Yeah,
And
we're
so
last.
we're last. And I take off, and you're like pulling back behind me, and you're like, I'm not going to let you run any faster. You're going to have to go off. I'm not going to leave you. We're a team. And so then I would slow down, and then I'd go back up because we
She's
weren't
going,
getting
come
fast
on,
enough.
come on, come on. I'm like, I'm not
And
moving.
then we catch up to the walkers, and I'm like, not good enough. Okay, we passed the walkers, but we got to get back to those runners. I was going to say that first mile, I think we were in the tens.
Yeah, we were grooving. I think we were like in 11:06 for the first mile, but I didn't, I think we found the balance, or GPS was also a little tricky, so my watch wasn't showing me 100% accurate paces, but I didn't want to I was trying to find a balance between like not stifling your excitement, because I think you should be excited, and also I know about hundreds of runners that have been on the show, and probably hundreds of more that are my friends, that start out too quick. That is the number one mistake that you can make in a marathon. So I was like, I'm trying to keep you excited and make you feel like, you're in it. But I also knew that if we maintain our pace, we're going to pass all these people in like 2 miles. So
Right.
we just need to be patient. We were a little antsy, but maybe looking back on the experience, you can see what the
Yeah.
what the thought process was.
Actually, now that you reflect on it, I mean, for that first, like, up to like 10 miles, we passed a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's
so
what
we were,
happens. Everybody starts out too quick. It's like the number one thing.
yeah, we were grooving in that first miles. And I think we were very smart with our potty breaks. I think we were very efficient the first 10 miles for sure.
Yeah. Cool. So let's talk about 10 miles. I agree. I don't think that there was really much that happened. We fueled really well. We were on pace. I was watching us and kind of pulling us back when things would get a little exciting, or when we were I was really trying to focus you. There's a blue line that you can run on in Chicago. That's like the quote unquote most efficient way to run the course. I was really focused on making sure that we stayed as close to that blue line as possible. But yeah, take it from there. So 10 miles to let's say 20. So 10 to 20. Walk
Mm,
us through that experience.
yeah. So 10 to 14, I felt like we were still feeling pretty good. 14 to 20 got a little tougher, I think. It was a little warmer. We were drinking a lot of water. I don't know if we stopped a lot to go to the bathroom. I don't know if that had a lot to do with me being nervous, hot. I don't think we were ever dehydrated. We were drinking a ton of stuff.
We were
Um,
drinking more than what we planned for because it was a
yeah,
little bit warmer than we thought. Yeah.
right. And I still have that. I still felt my hip as I was getting into the higher miles, and at that point, my back was starting to feel a little tired. I know my posture started probably getting a little bit not as upright. Um, but I think I was starting to think more about just I'm just nearing some heavier miles. And so I got a little bit tougher, but I still didn't have any doubt that I was going to finish. It just got a little tougher in the distance. The crowd support in Chicago is amazing,
Yeah.
and it's really what kind of drove a lot of the determination to finish and have a good time. And I think you and I both smiled a ton that entire
It was a
marathon
party.
because it was a big party.
Yeah, it was so fun. I was having a blast. Sometimes I'd look over at you, especially when we got into the later miles, and I'm like having a party, and you're like locked in. I'm like, okay, I need to lock in. She's gonna think I'm insane. But yeah, it was so much fun. And then I think when I was looking before we started filming at some of the our paces, so that I could see where we started to kind of taper down, because there was definitely a point where you could tell that maybe went out a little bit quick, or that it was getting a little hot, like you said, and we just weren't taking. We were taking sips of electrolytes at the aid stations, but it was just a little bit warmer than we expected. So around like mile 17 was when we started to kind of lose our goal pace a little bit. But like I told you at the beginning, she had a goal pace going in. My goal for us was to finish comfortable. So while I was watching the paces, I was mostly watching the paces to make sure that we were pulling back enough, not so that we were actually hitting paces.
Right.
And I remember mile 10, when we were about to go into our second set of 10 miles, like we did the 10 to 10K strategy. I asked you if you wanted to speed up a little bit like we had planned, and you said nope, this feels comfortable. So that's just a lesson in like the heat. It wouldn't have made sense for us to speed up. I would have only done it if you felt like you were feeling really good, and you weren't feeling bad, but you were feeling like we were good at the pace that we were at, and we just
Right.
adjusted to the pace that we were at so that we could finish comfortably. So that was all great. And you
Yeah.
rolled with the punches there, which is what I love. And then we got to mile 20. So talk about 20 to 26. This is when things got a little grittier. It was hot. We were having to take a few more potty breaks and a few more Gatorade stops because of just like the heat and everything. But yeah, talk about 20 to 26.
Well, I'm thankful to BioFreeze. Don't forget the
Yeah.
BioFreeze that we stopped and got a lot of that. Yeah, that's kind of where it got a little bit more challenging. My watch stopped. So my watch stopped, my earbud stopped. So that's something that I've got to kind of rectify for the next time. But that's when I stopped being able to see like how much further it was to the next mile and what we were at. So I was asking you quite a bit, like, when are we getting to the next mile? When's the
Yeah.
next mile coming? And that's when I started really thinking, oh, I think I leaned over to you and I said, this is getting hard. And you're like, yeah, it's a marathon. If it was easy, everybody would do it.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh, it's getting hard. And you're like, I'm not letting you stop. And I said, oh, I'm not stopping. I'm just wanting everyone to know this is hard. Um, I knew we had a lot of people supporting us. We had a lot of people back home supporting us. We had dad there. And yeah, it was very respectful to those that run this distance. And I had to dig deep, a few times. And your help was amazing. You're a very good strategist and a very good partner to run with because you knew what to say, when to say it, and when not to say something, and just let you be. And so, yeah, hats off to you for helping to get me across that finish line.
Hey, it was all you. But I do remember at mile 22 was the first time you were like, dang, this feels hard. And I remember as a quote unquote coach, I was like, yes, the first time that you're saying it's hard as mile 22, that's a win. Because it should feel harder before that. And it
Hmm.
didn't. And that's great. So yeah, I guess so I wasn't in your head. Like you said, I was talking to you when I felt like you needed something and letting you be when I felt like you didn't. But in those moments where you were a little bit quieter, internal, whatever, what were some of the things that you were saying to yourself or thinking about to help you continue to push forward?
Yeah, I wish I could remember what fuel looked like at that time if I had any of the caffeinated ones because I started feeling very much well when I was tired. Body felt tired and achy. I didn't have pain. I was tired and my legs felt I knew wasn't going to get hurt. I just felt like I was over it. I wanted to be done.
Mm-hmm.
But I wish I would, if I didn't have them, I wish I would take more caffeinated things at that time, was something that I'll think about for next time after mile 22. But I was really thinking about the family. Taylor had asked my sisters and my nieces to put together a kind of a little video of inspiration for me prior to the race. And, shout out to everyone who, all the sisters, my sisters and my nieces for doing that. And also for Taylor having the idea and for some advice for those doing a marathon. That is a great uplifting moment and something that you can carry through the marathon when things get hard. So when things got hard, I kept hearing my sister Noelle saying, "Go sis, go sis," and I'm like, "All right, I have to do this." And knowing that my sister Michelle's praying for me, and I'm like, "All right, I got this. I have to finish that line." And Auntie Suzette is going through her own struggles and realizing that who am I to stop right now when so many other people like herself have all these other daily struggles, and what am I like? That's not very good of me to to wimp out. I have to be tougher than that. And, that's a lot of things that has built me through our life is the family has a lot of grit and a lot of determination and a lot of competitiveness in a good way. And that's really what helped get me across that finish line. I'm like, I'm not stopping.
Yeah. Yeah, that's that. I'm glad you said that. 'Cause I forgot about that. But yeah, I had her family film just like a little voice note or video or something, and then I didn't make you do it on camera or anything like that. Or like I didn't even sit there and let you listen to it. I just kind of sent it to you and let you sit with it the night before. But if you have the means and the people to do that for you, especially for your first marathon, I think that's great.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, and then we got to a sign that said something, then one of those Nike signs about 1 more mile, and I have a clip where I filmed us and I said 1 more mile to you're a marathoner, and the look on your face is just so like dead, like let's just get this thing over with. You were I don't think you actually felt the like, or it didn't seem like you felt the excitement until you were able to cross the finish line. So once you crossed the finish line, what was that feeling like?
Whew, relief. I was like, thank God. I kind of felt like I was going to cry because I felt like crying earlier than that because it was getting hard. And at mile 23 to 24, I was like, oh my gosh, like I've got another 30 minutes, and I know you say look at it by mile in this, but I was just looking at, okay, how long does it normally take me to run that distance? And I had just had it in my head, that's how much longer I need to be running. And so crossing that finish line was a lot of relief, a lot of emotion. It was an amazing experience that I got to do it with you. And having those finish line photos of you and I together is something that I'll never forget.
Yeah. She said she wasn't going to cry at the finish line, but I have photo proof and I'll probably post it that that you did when you
I
when
did.
you you said that those tears were, I mean, relief, right? But like what
Mhm.
I always love to ask this, and I know it's you and I don't always get this like deep with each other, but I want to know like what were you carrying with you across the finish line that you felt like you came out the other side a different person for?
Hmm. Well, I didn't know I could do it. And so realizing that I can do it and that I had the grit and the determination and put in the time and, you know, life hasn't been easy, my entire life, and it's been challenging. So now you're going to make me cry again.
It's okay.
No, I mean it's a distance that I respect, and I respect everybody who does it, and it sure teaches you a lot about how tough you are to be able to do that.
Yeah. You're gonna make me cry. No, it was great. And I think that like you said, having this experience with you, like this was 4 marathon number 4 for me. So in terms of like training and doing this and this thing, like this is very much my comfort zone now. But being able to do it and support somebody else was a completely different experience for me, and have like not having to, but getting to help you manage the emotions that I know that I had for my first marathon. And mind you, not to like compare the experiences, but I was 100% alone with zero crowd support going through all of
Right.
that. So being able to just like circle back on that experience, and all I was thinking about through those few miles when you were going internal was like, I just need her to cross healthy. Like I just want you to cross the finish line feeling healthy so that you can either soak in this experience and learn something from it, and like you were just saying, feel stronger on the other side of it, or it inspires you to do it again. Either way, I was going to be happy with you just finishing, and we finished healthy, and I was really proud of the way that we paced ourselves. I think at
Hmm.
the end, turning the keys over to you and saying you lead the pack now, I think that was a really great move, and hopefully that was a little empowering for you because you were the one that was leading us towards the end. I will make this joke because I made it before and I have to say it, that I do think she was stopping at the porta potties just to sit at the end. Because we stopped a lot and I was like, there's no way you have to go to the bathroom again. But I do think that yeah, I was really proud of the way that we finished the race strong, and how we adjusted our goals partway through. There was a couple situations where either I was feeling tight in the quads because, or crampy because of the sun or the heat, and we were able to adjust our fueling. We were able to take, like, our stomachs were really strong.
Hmm.
I think all in all, I'm really proud of the way that I'm really proud of you, and how you pushed through and how you handled the stress and everything going on, because it was a lot. And I'm really proud of us for it was
Yeah.
really fun.
No, I think the whole training block leading up to it was a great experience. I think I mentioned this in our mini episode. I've got a very overwhelming and I don't want to call it stressful job. It's a busy. I've got a lot of pressure on my shoulders. Some say I work in the man's world, and I put in a lot of time and effort at work, long days, and to fit in the training block. I'm always very inspired at how people find the time to run and to put in the time to run. And runners do not get enough credit for the time and energy that they put in above their regular jobs. And I think that's the biggest respect I have because I had to shift. I mean, I work 11-hour days in office pretty much every day. And then usually throw in a little sprinkle in the morning at home and a little at night, just based on my role in the company is very much. I've got a lot of things that I'm involved with, and there's just a lot of pressure. And sometimes it just never seems like there's enough hours in the day. And to fit in this training block was by far the one thing I was most nervous about. Like, how was I going to do it? I knew how much time and effort you put into it and what type of hours it was. And I'm like, how am I going to do that? And so I had to shift from an evening workout person to a morning person. And at first it was really hard, but I will tell anyone who is starting their journey that it becomes very much habit and much easier. So 4 o'clock is the new time now. And I enjoyed those morning runs. I enjoyed the morning workouts. And it was nice to do that, start your day, go to work, and then come home and not have to then have the energy to do that after a full day of work and using your brain and whatnot. And that was the biggest thing that I learned and adjusted to during the training block.
Yeah. Very cool. And then I always like to ask for a piece of advice now that you're on the other side of this for anybody who's thinking about training for their first marathon or lining up to start training for their first marathon now. So, what's some advice that you would offer somebody who was in your shoes a couple months ago?
Yeah, I'll talk it from a perspective of anyone out there who's in their 50s. Kids are grown and out of the house and on their own, and you might have a demanding job. The advice I have is this is a great sport to figure out who you are and to identify goals that are different than what your kids need from you or what your job needs from you. These are goals. If I take it back a little bit further, when I was running before, um, I often felt like I was selfish for working out. I felt like it was a selfish thing if I did something that didn't involve the kids or if it didn't involve my husband or it took me away from work. And it took me, this training block taught me that it's not selfish, that you're doing something that's healthy for you and it's going to make you a better person. It's going to make you a better mom. It's going to make you a better partner. It's going to make you a better worker. And it helps you drive focus. So if you need that in your life and you need that and that's something that's missing for you, then I think you need to take the leap and try a race, whether it's a 5K, a 10K, a half. And if you are so motivated, try the full. But I think that's number one, and just to do it. I think there's a lot of people out there that want to. I know just in my personal life, just coming to work, I think I might be the second person in my company that's ran a marathon. There's one other person. He's super fast, so we won't talk about him. But he was also very supportive during this entire block and was very interested in my success. But a lot of people are like, oh, I don't know how you do that. I'm like, you can do it. So I might have some more runners based on my experience out there. I think there's some other people that are interested now. So my advice to them is just to do it. If you are missing something in your life and you're wondering what it is, maybe it's something like this that can help you.
Yeah, I love that. I love that a lot. Cool. All right, well let's get into some fun questions. You already know what's coming because you've listened to a lot of episodes, but we got to
Yep.
ask you about fuel and shoes.
Yep.
I always give the disclaimer that fuel and shoes are your own journey. Try out everything and anything when it comes to fuel. We talked about the feed, we talked about fuel goods, some good options for dialing in your nutrition. Same thing with shoes. Go to your local running store, get your feet measured, find out what's best for you. But for you, what have you liked for fuel over time?
So liquid goo is great because it's easy to go down and it's liquid and it goes down quick. So I like
Hmm.
that. The different chews, I started with honey stinger, but once I got turned on to scratch and also nugs, they just, you can chew them quicker. I felt like the honey stingers chews are good, but they take longer to chew. And
Hmm.
if you're trying to chew quickly and or do it while running, I felt like they did faster and you were able to digest them and they taste really good. Um, I like my walking breaks during fuel. I think it's something mentally for me that I know that I'm going to run for 30 minutes and then I get to take a break. Um, I could probably figure out how to run and drink and chew at the same time, but for me personally, at this point in my life, I'm not trying to win anything. I'm just I'm trying to have personal goals. I'm not trying to win. So I'm trying to do what feels good.
Look at
And
that
then
full
I
circle
liked
moment.
it
Look at
is a
that.
full circle
From when you
moment.
started running and you were going Mach speed every single time. And now we've matured as a runner. I love that.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when you get into your 50s is you become a little bit more humble about where you're at in your life.
Yeah.
Um, and then as far as like the hydration, magma hydration,
Magna.
I did that
Hmm.
during the week, I would drink that. And then during the race or during the runs, I would use the noon, endurance and
Endurance.
then the
Mhm.
scratch,
High carb mix.
yep, that stuff.
Yep.
Yep. And then for
Cool.
shoes, my very first race with you, and well, if I go way back, I don't even remember what shoes I was wearing
I
way
think you
back
were
then.
Brooks because I had Brooks in 2017.
So,
So,
okay, way
I,
back then. Okay, so
yeah.
probably was Brooks. It was a long time ago. And then fast forward, my very first shoe. When I got back into running, I did the Hoka's, which is why I bought the Hoka Trail shoe. And then I moved from there to Brooks, and then now I'm in Asics, and I love them. And
Asics have been your favorite by far, right?
they've been my favorite. And again, the other two were good to try. I don't know if it's what contributed to some knee pain and whatnot, but the I've been most successful in my Asics. So I think what I'm going to do is just keep with that for now.
Cool. Love it. And
Yep.
then I know we talked about this a little bit more before, and I was surprised by your answer before we started filming, but I wasn't going to ask you about what's coming up next for you because I didn't think that you were even thinking that, but you have been thinking about what's coming up next. So what are you thinking in terms of plans for where your running journey goes from here?
Well, gosh, if you get to this point and you get yourself all in marathon and you are successful, you can't stop. It's a disservice
You
to
got
your
the bug.
body to it is a disservice to your body to put you through all of this and then just to go back to bad habits. So no, I've been researching what those look like. We have a wedding coming up. So Taylor's brother, our son Wyatt, is getting married June of 2026. So probably won't have a marathon in 2026 just because we have wedding and whatnot, but there's a few half marathons I got my eye on. I'm kind of thinking um, there's one in Cottage Grove in May of 2026 that I think I might do. And the one reason why I'm most intrigued about that one is that's the half marathon I did virtually. So
Oh, cool. So you
it's
could
on
do
the
it in
Row
person.
River Trail. So that's like the very first half marathon they ever did virtually. And it's on the exact same path. So I thought it would be really fun to actually do it in the half marathon. And so that is one that I probably will sign up for because I don't think it'll really hurt with wedding preparation and whatnot.
Hmm.
There's another one up in Washington that I have my eye on that I might think about doing, but I think a couple half marathons are in my near future. And then of course we got, jingle bell runs and there's some turkey trots around. So
Oh
those
yeah.
I might just do my own. But I'll probably, yeah, I'm looking forward to running again and also getting more involved in some strength training and strength training around running.
Yeah.
And then
I,
I think then, hold on, because then in 2027, I think we need to be looking for something for you and I and Wyatt to do.
yes, I agree. I don't think Wyatt listens to this podcast, so I can say this, but my brother is he's in his early 20s. and he's very much in the early 20s boy mindset right now that he can run anything, no training. So my deal with my mom, we talked about potentially running a race, the three of us, is only if he can commit and do the full training for a half. If he can do that, then I'm comfortable us doing a full, but I will not sign my name on him going and trying to rip a full marathon no training. So he needs to get it together. But yeah, that would
Yep.
be great. I'm also we'll talk about this more on mine, but I'm also probably taking a break from marathoning in 2026 unless I get a cool opportunity. So it'll be fun to come back in 2027 and do something cool. So
Yeah.
all right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This was a lot of fun breaking down our marathon together. I'm going to be filming literally right after this my episode from my perspective. So I guess you'll hear a little bit of the mindset behind the miles, but thank you so much for coming on. This was fun. And congrats.
Well, thank you. Yep, I'm super excited. Yep, I'm a marathoner.
You're
Never
a
thought
marathoner.
I'd be able to say that, but yep, that was great. And I appreciate all that you did to help me get across that finish line.
Of course. All right. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thanks. All right, thanks.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the My First Marathon podcast. For more stories, tips, and resources, head to myfirstmarathonpodcast.com. And if you want access to bonus episodes, exclusive resources, and extra support for your training, make sure you check out the community at myfirstmarathonpodcast.com/exclusives. You can also follow along with us on socials, Instagram and TikTok. That's at myfirstmarathonpod. If you want to follow along with my personal journey, that's at tay.says. Whether you're training, recovering, or just thinking about signing up, you belong here. I'm so excited that you're here, and we'll see you on the next one.